The frames sitting on your face right now cost somewhere between $4 and $8 to make. A pair very similar to them can sell, finished, for $800. That is not a typo, and it is not an accident. It is the business model of the largest eyewear company most people have never heard of. And it is the reason a wave of cheap glasses flowing out of China is quietly rattling an industry worth somewhere between $155 and $190 billion, depending on whose estimate you use. This video is about EssilorLuxottica, the Franco-Italian giant that owns or licenses a staggering share of the brands you see on the optical shop wall, and about how direct-to-consumer sellers and Chinese factories are chipping away at the one thing that made it powerful: control of the price. If you enjoy stories about how technology and sheer scale quietly reshape industries nobody thinks about, hit like and subscribe so you never miss one. Now, let's get into it, because the gap between what glasses cost and what you pay for them didn't appear overnight. It was built, deliberately, over 60 years. Walk into any optical store and it looks like a free market in action. Dozens of brands, dozens of price points, dozens of logos. Ray-Ban over here, Oakley over there, Persol, Oliver Peoples, Vogue Eyewear. Then the designer names: Prada, Chanel, Armani, Burberry, Ralph Lauren, Coach, Versace, Dolce & Gabbana, Tiffany, Michael Kors. Here's the part most people never notice. EssilorLuxottica either owns or licenses all of those. The house brands it owns outright. The fashion houses it manufactures eyewear for under license. So the wall of choice is, to a large degree, one company wearing a lot of different hats. A columnist on the CBS program 60 Minutes once called it an optical illusion. Lots of brands on the wall. One company standing behind them. And it does not stop at the frames. The same company owns much of the retail where you buy them. LensCrafters, Sunglass Hut with over 3,100 locations, Pearle Vision, Target Optical, and the online stores Glasses.com and EyeBuyDirect. It even owns iMed Vision Care, the second largest vision insurer in the United States, with 43 million members. Sit with that for a second. One company can manufacture the product, own the brand on the product, own the store that sells you the product, and own the insurance plan that pays for it. That vertical chain, from factory to frame to shelf to insurance, is the entire engine. So, what does all that control do to the price? This is where it gets uncomfortable. The most cited figure, which appears in a Los Angeles Times report and elsewhere, is that this market power has enabled markups of up to 1,000%. Let's put a human face on that number. E. Dean Butler is the man who founded LensCrafters back in March 1983. He built it into the largest optical chain in North America, and then, in an irony we'll return to, the company was acquired out from under him in 1995. Years later, Butler toured the factories in China that make frames and lenses for the US market. And he told the LA Times what he found. Quality frames, comparable to what you'd get from a modern online brand, cost about $4 to $8 to produce. Designer quality frames, the kind carrying a Prada or Chanel label, run about $15. And first quality lenses cost about $1.25 each. Those same frames and lenses can retail in the United States for $800. His exact words: "It's ridiculous. It's a complete ripoff." Zoom out and the pattern holds. Industry figures put plastic acetate frame production at around $10 against an average US frame, price of roughly $231. The numbers vary, but the direction never does. The cost to make eyewear and the price you pay for it are only loosely related. What fills that gap is branding, licensing, and control of the shelf. Back in 2013, a Luxottica representative on 60 Minutes was asked why glasses cost what they do. The answer was blunt: everything is worth what people are ready to pay. None of this happened by accident. It was assembled, piece by piece, largely by one person. Leonardo Del Vecchio was born in 1935, an orphan who trained as a tool and die maker in Milan. He started out making spectacle parts, then shifted to finished frames, and in 1961 he founded Luxottica in Agordo, in Italy's Veneto region. Then came the acquisition machine. Luxottica listed on the New York Stock Exchange in 1990. Del Vecchio reportedly explained his choice of the big American market over Milan by saying, "If you have to sail, it's better to choose the big sea." He used that listing to fund a buying spree. Vogue Eyewear in 1990. LensCrafters and Persol in 1995. LensCrafters through a hostile takeover of the U.S. Shoe Corporation. In 1999, he bought Ray-Ban from Bausch & Lomb for $640 million, at a moment when the brand was in decline, then repositioned it as premium by cutting the number of styles, raising prices, and pulling it off cheap display racks. That turnaround is now considered one of the most studied in business history. In 2001, he added Sunglass Hut. If you want to understand exactly how this company operates, look at Oakley. In the early 2000s, Oakley was a genuine, culturally powerful competitor. After Luxottica acquired Sunglass Hut in 2001, it pushed suppliers to lower their wholesale prices. Oakley's founder, Jim Gennard, ended up in a pricing dispute with Luxottica, and Oakley's products were pulled from Sunglass Hut during that fight. Oakley's stock suffered. Then, in June 2007, the two companies signed a merger agreement, and Luxottica acquired Oakley for about $29.30 a share, roughly $2.1 billion total, at around an 18% premium. Now, some tellings frame this as a brutal takeover where Oakley was left with no leverage. Other records describe a board-approved deal at a premium. The honest read sits between the two. The pricing dispute and the loss of shelf access were real, and so was the eventual premium-priced merger. Either way, the lesson is the same. When you control the shelves, you have leverage over every brand that needs those shelves. The final piece arrived when the merger that created today's giant was announced in January 2017 and unconditionally approved by the European Commission in March 2018. On the 1st of October 2018, EssilorLuxottica was born, with a combined market capitalization of around $70 billion. Del Vecchio died in 2022 at the age of 87, one of the richest people in Italy. The machine kept running without him. Today, the company reports full-year 2025 revenue of about 28.5 billion euros, up 11.2%, with roughly 204,000 employees and around 17,750 stores. Now for the twist that reframes the entire story. A huge amount of the eyewear you think of as Western and expensive is already made in China. Remember, Butler was touring Chinese factories that produce frames and lenses for the US market under a wide variety of brand names. The center of gravity is a city called Danyang in Jiangsu province. Danyang produces more than 400 million pairs of lenses a year. That is about 50% of global lens production and roughly 80% of China's total. It's home to more than 1,600 eyewear-related businesses employing over 50,000 people, and in 2022, its taxable eyewear sales reached 12.23 billion yuan, about $1.7 billion. There's a saying that captures the scale. 1 out of every 2 people in the world wears glasses with lenses from Danyang, and the industry isn't ancient. It traces back to the 1960s, when apprentices who trained at state-owned factories in Shanghai and Suzhou came home and started local enterprises. Danyang is one of several Chinese hubs, alongside Shenzhen, Wenzhou, Xiamen, and Yingtan. Here is why that terrifies the old pricing model. At a Danyang factory, the cost of a finished pair of glasses can run as low as about $4. The entire premium structure depends on the customer never seeing that number. The moment the factory and the customer can find each other directly, the markup has nowhere left to hide. That is exactly what the disruptors figured out. Zenni Optical was founded in 2003 by Tibor Laxe and Julia Zhen. Its original name was literally 19dollareyeglasses.com, and it rebranded when it began offering glasses at around $7 to $8. Today it holds roughly 3.8% of the US market. Then there's Warby Parker, which launched selling prescription glasses online at a flat $95, lenses included. It grew to more than 300 stores by 2025, reached about $771 million in revenue in 2024, holds roughly 7% of the US market, and went public in 2021. There's also Lenskart out of India, adding frame price competition. The mechanism they share is simple. Go direct to consumer, often sourcing from the same kind of factories that supply everyone else, and skip the traditional retail markup. And here's the detail that tells you the incumbent saw this coming. EyeBuyDirect, one of those online discount sellers, is itself owned by EssilorLuxottica. The giant is hedging against the disruption by owning a piece of it. Look at the 2024 US market share picture, and the pressure becomes visible. Warby Parker at about 7.2%, Zenni and Pearle Vision each around 3.8%. Ray-Ban at 2.2%, and other small retailers making up about 32% of the market. That long tail of small and newer players is the real signal. The wall of one company's brands is still standing, but the edges are being chipped away by cheap, direct, mostly online competition, and much of that cost advantage traces straight back to Chinese manufacturing. Is it actually a monopoly? Here, I have to be straight with you, because this is where a lot of videos on this topic overreach. EssilorLuxottica manufactures only about 25% of frames worldwide. That is an enormous share, but it is not the whole market, and legally, it is not a monopoly. US regulators cleared the 2018 merger, and in September 2025, a federal judge dismissed a consumer antitrust lawsuit that had named the company and 48 co-defendants and alleged control of more than 80% of the prescription eyeglasses and sunglasses markets. The judge found the plaintiffs failed to properly define the relevant product markets, so the accurate label is dominant player or near monopoly, not an illegal one. It's worth noting the company has faced consequences elsewhere, though. LensCrafters advertised a measurement system as 5 times more accurate. The claim was false, and it produced a $39 million settlement approved in September 2024. So, does cheap Chinese eyewear actually destroy this giant? Here's the honest answer, and it's the reason the legal reality matters. The company is not sitting still, and it is not shrinking. It is pivoting hard into exactly the kind of product a tech audience should be watching: smart glasses. EssilorLuxottica's partnership with Meta dates back to 2019. In 2025, smart glasses accounted for more than a third of the company's growth in the third quarter alone. It sold over 7 million Ray-Ban and Oakley smart glasses in 2025, up from 2 million total across 2023 and 2024 combined. The lineup now includes the Ray-Ban Meta in 2 generations: the Oakley Meta HSTN, the Oakley Meta Vanguard, and the $800 Meta Ray-Ban display. It's first with a heads-up display. And Meta isn't just a hardware partner. In mid-2025, Meta reportedly took a roughly 3% stake in EssilorLuxottica, with an option to raise it to 5%. The company is targeting 10 million units of annual smart glasses capacity, a goal it pulled forward from the end of 2026, with reports of talks to push toward 20 or even 30 million. On top of that, it has been buying up companies like the streetwear brand Supreme, the European eye hospital group Optegra, and the eye care AI firm Retin.ai, describing its own evolution from an optical company into a medtech and big data group. So here's where the premise lands. Cheap glasses, much of it flowing out of China through direct-to-consumer channels, are genuinely eroding the old model, the one where a wall of brands hit a $4 to $8 frame behind a several $100 price tag. Zenni, Warby Parker, and the sheer transparency of Chinese manufacturing costs have put real downward pressure on the low end, and even forced the incumbent to own a discount brand of its own. But destroying is the wrong word. The pricing power on basic frames is under real threat. The company itself is not. It responded the way dominant companies always do. It moved up the value chain, into smart glasses, into medtech, into an AI and wearables future, arm in arm with Meta. The next battle over your face isn't $4 frames versus $800 frames. It's whether the company that spent 60 years controlling how you see is about to control what you see through a display too. The giant critics love to call a monopoly didn't get destroyed by cheap glasses. It used the moment to reinvent what glasses even are. If this changed how you think about the frames on your face, give it a like and subscribe for more stories about the technologies quietly reshaping the world. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Now that a $4 frame and an $800 frame can come from the same factory, would you ever pay full price for a designer pair again?